CNN is suspended Chris Cuomo indefinitely for what he did around unethical journalistic practices around his brother, the former governor of New York. Wow. It only took him like 2 years. It's Rob Nelson Live. Hey, I'm Rob Nelson. I used to host a show on Fox, and now I do a digital live stream called Rob Nelson Live. And my whole mission is to figure out how in this time of division we can find common ground.
Speech, and they're not allowed to do that anymore.
I understand what you're talking about.
They be focused on rebuilding California.
Oh, it's so true. Come on. This is where this gets real.
He says you're heading.
I wouldn't want to be black and driving in a car.
Right.
Point there, right? Some of what's in this music, you can't sanitize it. All right, welcome to the show, everybody. Whatever platform you're on, from Facebook to Twitter to Reddit to Twitch. Love your feedback, your interactivity. I don't get to all your comments, but Crafty manages, producer Crafty, to get all your comments up. Let's dive right in. Big news in media. Chris Cuomo very abruptly was suspended from CNN. I mean, by very abruptly, I mean literally they suspended him this afternoon, and they didn't even have time to tell Anderson Cooper's team to prepare. They had like an hour because Anderson Cooper goes and then Chris Cuomo goes on at 9 p.m. And Anderson Cooper's team was literally like, oh, we got to fill another hour like now. They did it very abruptly, and they did it because the Attorney General of New York's report came out with more information about what Chris Cuomo did involving his brother and helping his brother fend off sexual harassment allegations. Now, this is super significant for a lot of reasons. I'll get in just a framework of what happened. First of all, for CNN to suspend Chris Cuomo is a huge deal. He's their number one anchor. He is the face of CNN. He's their most watched show. He's also the biggest presence on the network. I mean, if Tucker Carlson is Fox News, Chris Cuomo is CNN, followed by Don Lemon. But really, Chris Cuomo is truly the face of CNN. Of course, everybody's got a white face, right? Right? Don Lemon's number two. But that's just the reality. That's how it plays out in this case. To suspend indefinitely their number one anchor. Now, before we jump too far, this doesn't mean they're going to keep him off forever, but it's a big deal that they literally, after doing nothing, abruptly suspended. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, well, Andrew Cuomo, former governor of New York, was accused by multiple women of sexual harassment. And in the wake of all those accusations, Cuomo ultimately resigned, which he had to do. He was going to get impeached. The Democrat-controlled legislature of New York was going to impeach him and convict him and remove him from office. It was clear. People had come out and said, we're going to do this. And again, it's Democratic-controlled legislature, both houses of New York, didn't matter. They were like, we're going to remove him from office. So he resigned and claimed he did nothing wrong, but nonetheless resigned. And meanwhile, the lieutenant, the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, had been digging in and pushing what led this whole investigation, and had released information about Chris Cuomo's involvement in helping his brother. And at first, the issue was, well, he appears to have helped his brother. Now, again, if you remember, the Me Too movement was also behind helping Governor Cuomo. So they got the CEO of Me Too and a major board member, both got super involved in helping, basically throw one of his accusers, actually several, under the bus and trying to deflect what they'd said, investigate them, see if they could discredit their stories. That became a huge issue because clearly, look, no shocker here. Me Too was political from the start, right? Me Too was about something really important, and it became something really important if you're a conservative or a Republican or not a liberal or a Democrat. And if you were a liberal or a Democrat, suddenly Me Too was a little bit quieter. You saw that with celebs all the time, but you really saw it with Me Too, but people didn't notice or didn't want to see until it came out from Letitia James' report that, these top people in the Me Too movement literally going to Andrew Cuomo's defense quietly, not publicly saying, hey, but quietly going behind to try to help him offset the ramifications of this, to lessen the impact and possibly discredit various people who'd accused him of stuff. And if you go back and look, the accusations are pretty tough. They're pretty strong. They're multiple ones. They're similar in the accusations. And you can say how much do you believe or not believe. It's hard not to believe, no matter what, that at least a certain portion of what they're all saying was true. Is everything true? Well, we'll never know. It's a he said, she said. But there was enough. There was enough there. And it wasn't just like people with an axe to grind. It was people who'd worked for him for years. It was people who were close to him. In the case of Anna Rush, the one that this actually is all about, him getting fired, she accused him of harassing her at a wedding reception. And you can see the picture of him like leaning in, grabbing her head to kiss her in this public reception. And she's literally cringing, like, hands off me. Like, sort of like, really? It's like the drunken dude at the party, except he's the governor of New York. Anyway, all the accusations mount up. The Me Too movement's in the middle of covering it up. The CEO and top board member of Me Too, the Me Too movement, resigned. And now, if you remember, like about a month and a half ago, they fired. Me Too came out and said, we're firing like the whole staff. We're starting clean because we want the Me Too movement to be viewed as impartial, not politically driven by one side or the other. Meanwhile, though, over at CNN, Chris Cuomo had kind of gone to bat for his brother. And there was enough evidence that he had acted inappropriately that at any other network, he would have been fired. And the media would have called for his head on a platter. Had anybody else done half of what he did that we knew about before yesterday to help his brother? To start with, he's a journalist. He should have no comment or interaction about his brother, privately or publicly, as a journalist. He made the unfortunate mistake of having the love fests with his brother, where during the pandemic, they Governor Cuomo would come on and they'd have a big party, and, he'd joke and laugh, and they had props. And thank you, Seriously Doubtful, for welcoming me back. They would play around, and Chris Cuomo, the news anchor, made no hesitation of saying he thought his brother was the best governor in the world, was doing the best job. Remember, at the time, the country was loving Andrew Cuomo. I'm an independent. I hate both parties. I even said at the time, look, Cuomo, is showing real leadership, like it or not, mistakes or not. He's acting like a leader, which I felt Donald Trump wasn't. That said, you saw Chris Cuomo bringing his brother on in a completely partial way. There was no attempt. I'm not covering you. I'm not reporting on you. I'm bringing you on and giving you a platform, and I'm applauding you and saying you're the best governor in the world and the country loves you, and I love you, and everything you do is great. And meanwhile, they gave him an Emmy. The Emmys gave him an Emmy. Yes, an actual Emmy, if you remember. They made up a category. It was best nonfiction performance or something like that. They literally made a category of an Emmy to give to Andrew Cuomo, which at the time I was like, forget about the absurdity and the politics of it. You're giving a seated governor an Emmy for performance? Like, what about that doesn't make sense? Emmys go to actors, people playing roles. You don't get an Emmy for, best real life firefighting rescue. You don't get an Emmy for most heroic action taken in war, right? You get an Emmy for playing the guy who did the most heroic action in war. So giving a seated governor an Emmy for a nonfiction performance was a joke to start with. The only bigger joke was when, after he resigned, they took his Emmy back. Like, oh, sorry, now it doesn't look good. We're taking it away from you. I mean, they don't even do that with sports and stuff. You don't get your Super Bowl ring taken away because you did something bad afterward. I mean, if you cheated, your team could theoretically, although, by the way, if you're a baseball fan, didn't really hurt the Houston Astros for cheating and winning a World Series. They got to keep that stuff. But, basically, the Emmys was a joke to give it to him, and then a joke to back down and take it away. It was like so pathetic, like, blowing in the wind. Nonetheless, Chris Cuomo raised his brother up on a pedestal on national television on his news show. That's why I'm starting with this, because he'd never done that. What he did next might be somewhat more acceptable. But by doing that, he already laid down the foundation that I'm going to put my brother on a pedestal. So when Chris Cuomo came out and said, I never covered my brother, well, check out this clip. Okay, we'll get to the clip in a minute. So what happened is Chris Cuomo defended himself, saying, I never actually did this stuff. I never actually, defended my brother. What he actually said is I never covered my brother, which was a lie because he did cover his brother, right? Clearly covered his brother by putting him on and giving him effusive praise. That was covering his brother. As soon as the scandal broke, Chris Cuomo went silent and said, it's not appropriate for me to cover my brother. Again, bit of a problem since you chose to cover him when he was rising high and standing tall. You chose to literally throw endless, unchecked, unfiltered praise upon him, softball questions and more. Suddenly, when he's in trouble, you're silent. It's not right to cover my brother. Actually, no. At that point, if you have integrity, you go, I covered him when he was on top, and I'm going to cover this now and try to be objective. Instead, Chris Cuomo just took the easy route out and said, I can't talk about it, which was hypocritical. But what he did next was the problem. He actually went to help his brother and justified it, saying he's my brother. So I'm helping my brother. And he admitted to, making a few giving some advice to the governor's team. The governor's team called and asked for advice. And he said, I gave advice. I only gave advice. And my advice was straightforward and honest. And I told my brother, come clean with whatever you did. I didn't do anything wrong. And I get it. It's his brother, right? His point, family first. Absolutely. Family comes first. So family came first. That's fair. You're looking out for your big bro, despite the fact that Andrew Cuomo's a dick. And I know that from personal experience. Nonetheless, to Chris Cuomo, he's his big brother. And Chris Cuomo is kind of a jerk too. So maybe it runs in the family. Although their father, the first Governor Cuomo of New York, was actually considered to be a pretty nice guy, but a ruthless politician in his own way. And Andrew Cuomo's a ruthless politician. And Chris Cuomo's a ruthless pseudo-journalist because he pretends to be a journalist, but actually doesn't do what he says, right? My problem with Chris Cuomo is not that he stood up for his brother. It's that he lies about what he did. He uses a double standard, covers him when it looks good, ignores it and says, I can't when it looks bad. Criticizes people for losing their temper, for being hostile, for not being civil and having conversations, and then gets caught on camera, threatened to throw a kid down the stairs and F him up because he called him he called him a derogatory nickname. Fredo, called him Fredo. It's not actually like a swear word, but he called him Fredo from The Godfather. Fredo's the like loser brother. Point is, Chris Cuomo admitted to doing something which he said wasn't wrong. The new revelations took it a step further. They showed that Chris Cuomo did a whole lot more than what he said he did. And before we get into that, I want to just play a short clip of an MSNBC anchor talking about this a year ago.
Given the moment that we have been living in for the past 2 years, given how everyone has had a reckoning with this Me Too moment, why would somebody like Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is a savvy politician, not have buttoned things up, not have gotten the message to be careful about what he said around his staffers, around others? And the person said it's not that he didn't think the rules didn't apply to him. It's just that's in the Cuomo DNA. They are extraordinarily friendly, I guess, by nature.
So there was the first line of defense. Didn't do anything wrong, just extraordinary friendly. Okay, you be extraordinary friendly. I just grab people inappropriately. I grab women at wedding receptions and squish their face and try to kiss them when I'm drunk. The allegations against him were way worse than that. I mean, he was accused of actually raping someone, making super derogatory comments, asking women about their sex lives, if they were married, saying he was interested in younger women. All inappropriate when you're the governor and people work for you. But if you look at the accusations, to argue he was just friendly, and for MSNBC's anchor to take the softball approach, it's just typical, like covering up. Yeah, great point. Seriously doubtful. Rudy Giuliani and Governor Cuomo walked us through tragedies and then became villains. quickly after, both for different reasons and both deserved. I mean, again, you can argue Cuomo's response to the pandemic. I said at the time, the bigger issue than his, I'm not minimizing the sexual harassment issue. I'm saying, but the media put attention on that, soft attention, but largely ignored, with the exception of the media on the right, largely ignored the whole issue with moving people into locking people into nursing homes who had COVID. And right there was literally the most distressing thing, the thousands of lives that were lost because of a bad policy call on his part, partly because he wanted to flip the middle finger to Trump and didn't want to use the resources that they provided by bringing in, the ships that they could put people on. But beyond that, lying about it. So they covered the data up. They covered the deaths up because they didn't want it to look bad. So right there was a crime. There was a crime. And that should have gotten more attention, and it got very little, right? But yes, both governors, Giuliani and Cuomo, walked us through tragedy, and both then were brought down by various scandals. Rudy for his kind of going off the deep end with Trump and becoming like sort of just a mouthpiece and meddling and kind of just going cuckoo. And Cuomo for his actions and his repeated attempts to silence anybody, using brute political force to threaten anybody who was going to expose him. Back to his brother, Chris. Chris's sin was not looking out for his brother. It was being a journalist and only covering his brother when it was positive, ignoring his brother when it was negative, and more importantly, helping behind the scenes. What I want to just quickly point out is what he actually did that came out. So just for context, he in the Letitia James transcripts from the Attorney General, in the interviews with him, basically it comes out that he actually remember Ronan Farrow wrote about this. He attempted to learn more about the Ronan Farrow sources, was asked to contact colleagues of Ronan Farrow to find out if more people were going to come out with information, and agreed to do so. He claimed that he never made calls on behalf of his brother. If you remember, he did a televised message on this, very circumspect, saying, "I did nothing wrong. He's my brother, and I broke no rules." It turns out he reached out to media sources to find out, again, potential accusers who might come out. At one point, Melissa DeRosa, one of the top aides to Governor Cuomo at the time, said that Politico is going to come out with one or two more people. Can you check your sources? And Chris Cuomo texts back, quote unquote, on it. Like, okay, you're literally doing what the governor's office is asking you to do to find out anything else negative about your brother. Is that wrong to do to help your brother? No, it's wrong to do when you're a journalist. Or if you have integrity, you go, guys, I can't be impartial in this. I shouldn't have covered my brother when things were looking good for him. I'm going to tell you right now, things are looking bad for him. I'm going to step away from this. I'm going to help my brother. I'm going to help my brother as best I can. I'm going to use all my resources, all my sources to help my brother. That's what I do. I stand by my brother. I'm stepping down as an anchor. That would be fine, but don't pretend you're objective. Don't pretend you're fair. Don't, for 1 second, would Chris Cuomo have tolerated this if anyone else had done it? Absolutely not. If someone had done this on the right for a Republican, a reporter, a journalist, an anchor, would Chris Cuomo have been okay with it? No, he would have demanded their immediate resignation, firing. Would never have been okay with it. Nor is it okay to pretend you're being objective when you're not. Oh, I'm doing nothing wrong. I don't cover them, but you did when it was positive. You're not when it's negative. And you're actually going behind the scenes and using your ability as a journalist, well-connected, powerful journalist, to find out information to help your brother. That's not okay as a journalist. It's okay to say, I can't be a journalist right now, step away. He didn't do any of that. The threatening the whistleblower, right, is okay. I get it. Apprehensive Fly. Always with the jokes, Apprehensive Fly. So let me quickly play something that The View tackled this. And this is what really disturbed me. When I say this is the problem with the media, here's the problem I have. Whoopi Goldberg sets this all up and sort of acts kind of naively like, oh, more comes out. This is right before CNN suspends him today, and says, this morning, says, well, it's a all this stuff going on. Who knows? Again, whoa, wouldn't have been that way if it was Donald Trump, right? Or, wouldn't have been that way if it was Tucker Carlson. But it's very sort of, oh, well, we'll see what CNN does. But then what happens next is what's so interesting. There's a little bit of Cuomo in between. Took a little chunk of this. Check it out.
I said point blank, I can't be objective when it comes to my family. So I never reported on the scandal. And when it happened, I tried to be there for my brother. I'm not an advisor. I'm a brother. I wasn't in control of anything. I was there to listen and offer my take.
I mean, I like Chris. I know the family. I know Matilda. Well, I'm not going to be judge and jury of the guy. All I'm saying is that I understand the inclination to help his brother.
Think he did anything illegal? I mean, does it feel...
That I don't know. You're the lawyer. You tell me.
That's the thing. I think it comes down to it doesn't feel right. It seems unseemly, right? But is it illegal? I don't think so. I think he's a brother. He wanted to help his brother.
Wow. Well, it's good to know that Joy Behar is not going to be judge and jury, because she's never judge and jury. I mean, the utter hypocrisy that people, it's like a comedy. You don't even see that you literally have a whole different approach when it's a politics you don't like. Oh, I know Chris and his family. I like them. I understand wanting to back your brother. And look, I don't want to be judge and jury. I get it. Okay. Well, then don't be judge and jury on everything else. I understand the desire to help his brother too. And I say, go for it. Then just step down as a journalist. And for Sunny Hostin, the legal analyst, to be sitting there going, did he do anything illegal? I mean, I don't think so. I mean, is it look a little unseemly? Maybe, but it's illegal. Oh, no one's saying he broke the law. But by the way, his brother did. How about you want to focus on that? He was covering up for his brother's absolutely illegal behavior. Completely illegal criminal behavior by one, using his power as governor over people, over women, and two, by committing acts which, again, he would have been impeached for. And he's facing criminal charges. He may be prosecuted for sexual assault allegations. You want to focus on that because that's not just unseemly, Sunny Hostin. That's illegal. But no, Chris Cuomo didn't do anything illegal. I didn't say Chris Cuomo did anything illegal. How about you just jump down his throat like you would everybody else and say what he did is completely unethical as a journalist and completely destroys your credibility as a journalist and completely supports all the people on the right who think CNN is literally just a propaganda machine for the left. And this is the problem with the media right now. It's literally both sides are propaganda machines, except one side, the left, claims they're not. They pretend we're objective. CNN, we're all objective. You're not objective. And the fact that everybody teams up around you and supports you, oh, he didn't do anything really that bad, a little unseemly. No, it's not just unseemly. It destroys credibility. And the media doing this, the mainstream media doing this, is exactly what is deteriorating the people's confidence in the media and fueling this ugly divide in our country. Jack Dorsey stepped down as the CEO of Twitter. And it's interesting because he stepped down as CEO of Twitter. He still remains in running Square, the payment processor. But his stepping down was interesting. And I've argued for a while, Jack Dorsey didn't like what Twitter's become. Now, there's also business reasons. Twitter's doing a lot, bringing a lot of new products in. It hasn't been doing financially as well since Donald Trump stopped being president. Trump kept Twitter alive times 1,000. But Jack Dorsey, as I've said before, I was at the Bitcoin conference in Miami when Jack Dorsey spoke, and Jack Dorsey came on stage and people were yelling, "Get out of here. You're a censorship guy. You don't belong here." And Jack Dorsey was like, hold on. Like, I get it, but I'm not a fan of what Twitter has done. We did what we did. I felt like it was the right move at the time, but I don't think we should be censoring people. And I'm creating a new platform that will, I think it was called Open Sky or something, that will be a decentralized, non-censorable platform. People didn't believe him. He's like, you don't have to believe me. Wait and see. Here's my point. Jack Dorsey, other guys in the tech industry tech leaders realize what they're doing. They realize the distortion they're creating. Now, I'm not saying all of them are going to follow suit with Jack Dorsey, but I bet Jack Dorsey in his head's going, I don't want to, this isn't who I am. I'm not a censorship guy. It's not who he is. It's not who he ever was. But Twitter became that. And Twitter became corporatized. CNN is corporatized media. Fox News is corporatized media. People no longer trust the media because they think you just feed narratives, whichever side you want, you frame it. Kyle Rittenhouse, one side, he's a savior who walked in to protect his city. And the other side, he's a white supremacist who walked in to kill black people and people who like black people. Neither is true. Neither is accurate. He's not an angel. He shouldn't have been carrying an assault weapon into a crowd of people. How about we make that illegal? But at the same time, other people had weapons, and the people he shot, one of them's a convicted sex offender who just gotten out of a suicide watch from a mental health facility and pointed a gun at him. There's blame to go all the way around, but we get stuck in these narratives, one extreme or the other. If you're Andrew Cuomo, you were a good guy, and Chris Cuomo's a good journalist if it's from the left, But if it was someone on the right, if it was Tucker Carlson, a Republican candidate, you're evil. And the right flips it around. The people distrust the media for this reason. They don't believe anymore it's accurate. They don't believe it's honest. People are like, I don't know what to trust anymore. And the media is doing this with the Biden administration, running the Biden lines out or trashing. Everything Biden does is evil and horrible. He's going to lead us to socialism. He's going to lead us to socialism. Or, it's never Biden's fault. Rising gas prices, inflation, Afghanistan, the border, COVID, and none of it's Biden's fault. From the left, it's absurd. Of course, it's Biden's fault. He's a president. That's what you're in charge. It's your fault whether you did it or not. You take the ups and the downs. You get the wins and the losses. You coach a team when they lose. It's not my fault. You see quarterbacks who do that. No, they're not. They don't last very long. It's like the good quarterback takes it all on, even when they played a good game. Say, you know what? I own my piece of this. You never throw your team under the bus, but you always take ownership. Imagine a coach who's like, when we lose, it's not my fault. When we win, it's all me. It's always someone else's fault when we lose. It would never fly. You run a company, if you can't bring the company to where it needs to be, you lose your job. They move you on. So Biden's president for a year. What's not working is on him. How about he owns it? But how about the media stops pretending that he doesn't? How about the media stops buffeting him? Where do you think, if you're in the mainstream media, this is going to somehow lead to something good? It's only going to lead to people distrusting more and more and looking for alternative media sources, media outlets, alternate narratives. Nothing is as black and white as we make it seem. To just bring it back to the Me Too, Matt Lauer's, in the news talking about how he's lost all his friends and hides out. And I'm not defending Matt Lauer, by the way. But, if you go back and look at the whole Matt Lauer thing, his whole thing is, I did something really wrong. I had all these affairs with women, but they were consensual. And the main one that got him fired was, involved a woman with whom, by all accounts, it was at least initially consensual behavior. She claimed that she went to his room to get her key, then came back again, and that, she said, no, don't have anal sex with me, and that she was too drunk to consent. And he said, look, she never said no, and we had an affair for months afterward, and she'd come over and come to my dressing room. So, which is it? Again, if she didn't want it to happen, why would she keep having the affair? He didn't work for her. He wasn't literally in a position to destroy her career. Again, I'm not defending Matt Lauer, but Matt Lauer's point is what I did wrong wasn't I had consensual interactions with these women. I cheated on my wife. I was a dick, all kinds of bad things, but I never actually forced anyone to do anything. But what struck me in that accuser's thing, if you look back on it, is she kind of claimed, she admitted that they kept having an affair, and he cut it off rather abruptly, and she was pissed, and so what's true? And to the final issue that just struck in my head, again, not defending Matt Lauer. I don't know actually what happened. Maybe he did force her to do something. She says he did. He says he didn't. She definitely kept coming back for more. So where does that fit in? But to the issue of I was too drunk to consent. Think about that for 1 second. If you are by the way, I don't recommend anybody have sex or do anything with somebody who's super drunk and expect it to end well. Right? It's not appropriate. It's not right. You can make your own judgment whether somebody is capable of really being 100% certain what they're doing. But if the argument I'm too drunk to consent were to be a valid one, Well, then can I claim I'm too drunk to know what I did when I got in my car and drove? I was too drunk to know that I shouldn't be driving, and I drove. If I beat someone up or shoot someone because I'm drunk or abusive, can I claim I was too drunk? Why is being drunk allow you to claim you are not able to consent? You weren't too drunk to walk up to the guy's room. You weren't too drunk to go back a second time after you got your key, you know? But again, not defending Matt Lauer, merely making the point that the narrative that came out is all one-sided. Maybe Matt Lauer should, maybe, I don't know. I wasn't there. And certainly, you know, I make my own judgments on what I think, as you will, on what you think people did or didn't do. But my point is merely the media narrative immediately threw Matt Lauer down the, you know, boom, he's done, right? Didn't do that to Andrew Cuomo. Didn't do that to Andrew Cuomo. Why not? You know, what changed? Matt Lauer certainly was a liberal journalist. What changed? What happened? And if we lose sight of why this matters, it matters because it allows us as a society to believe and have credibility, not just in the news and information we hear, but in the context under those things. Once you stop believing anything but your narrative and only hear your narrative, you stop being able to make independent, wise choices. You stop thinking for yourself. You're no longer actually thinking about it. You're just reflex acting on it. And the consequence of that is really bad outcomes. The consequence of having these strong narratives, one way or the other, say on the Me Too movement, is that people start distrusting everything when it comes to the Me Too movement. They start distrusting accusers who should actually be trusted. You know, when Dave Chappelle is thrown under the bus for his transphobic jokes, when he had a show that was all about a trans woman who's his opening act who commits suicide, and the media narrative is that he's somehow like this horrible transphobic person, you know, it makes people dislike or distrust or even blame trans people unfairly. When a person, to stick to the trans Dave Chappelle thing, can't, when if I say something that that suggests I think there's men and there's women, there's two genders, or at least there's two biological sexes. You may choose to change your gender, but you can't truly undo the fact that we start with two biological sexes. That's how our DNA is built. Do whatever you want from there. If I claim that, I'm now claimed to be anti-trans person, and much of the media will reflect that. You can't disagree with a trans person about trans issues. When we get there, we create more division and more hatred. And that largely starts with the media, the mainstream, the cable news media, and the digital media platforms, the social platforms that enforce that by deciding what's information, what's misinformation, whether it's COVID, politics, sports, I don't care. That's the problem with what we're doing. And that's the danger to all of us, because we won't get, you know, if Rittenhouse is either a savior or a white supremacist when he was neither, when an outcome that even left-wing legal scholars told me was going to acquit him because of the way our laws are written around self-defense, when that becomes not okay, when that becomes a symbol of white supremacy versus a symbol of the justice system worked, and those are what the laws are, but yet we have real serious systemic problems around race and criminal justice and real severe criminal justice reforms that we're not doing that would benefit Black people. When we can't have that conversation anymore because of our narratives, we all suffer, particularly the people who are getting screwed over the most. That's my take on it. Let me bring Crafty on just for a minute. Producer Crafty, because he's looking so sharp in his blue. Crafty, your thoughts. Can't hear you, Crafty. You're muted. Unmute. Crafty, you can never mute yourself.
So I'm trying to figure out, one, why is it taking 2 years? And then two, why now? Right.
And isn't that the question most people are probably wondering if they think about it, right? Why did it take so long and why now, right? So Crafty, two great questions, right? Why did it take so long, right? Probably we think because the media is going to hide it. They're going to bury it as long as they could. But why now? The question of why now, guys. And, you know, was it truly just that there was too much for CNN to push back on? But, you know, could they not just keep digging in their heels? Or is something more going on that's like, you know, like a reckoning. And Crafty, what do you think? Is the liberal media finally starting to realize that this process is going to eat them up and they have to? Is it because they're losing ratings, but he's their top guy?
Okay, so it's I don't know. It's weird because you and I talked about it. Why is CNN all of a sudden trying to hold like Kamala Harris accountable? Why all of a sudden are they talking negatively about the Biden administration? Why are they now, but not yet 2 years ago and not last year? Why are they now starting to hold people on the left and Democrats accountable? Where was the accountability before? And it's CNN that I feel like is making that effort to push, you know, let's clean up the error of our ways a little bit. And I'm like, why? What's causing CNN to expose that?
So I think it's something we got to watch. And I think there is a tide turning. I think cancel culture is starting to bite the butt of the woke. I think the mainstream media on the left is realizing they're losing credibility. And I think at some level, it's a self-defense. I'm not about to suggest I think they've suddenly come to Jesus and had a moral reckoning. I think there's a self-interest involved where they go, we need to appear to be more balanced. And don't be surprised if Chris Cuomo's indefinite suspension only lasts a short amount of time where they go, oh, we thought about it. We checked it out. We realized he was a bad boy. We have slapped him hard on the wrist, actually both wrists, very hard. He suffered a severe punishment of being taken off the air for a couple of weeks. We're going to let him back on. I'm not betting that doesn't happen, which would answer your question, why now? But great as always, Crafty, to see you in your blue shirt. I want Crafty's shirt, guys. I think I could wear that blue nicely.
There you are. It'll bring out your eyes, Rob.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Listen, more for us to follow. And guys, we're going to try to do some more guests. We got 11,000 views on our YouTube on our Dr. Malone interview. I want to do more on COVID. RFK Jr.'s book, #1 bestseller on Amazon, worth reading, even if you don't agree with it. It's very, very documented. Again, just read, just take in all sides. You don't have to pick one side or the other. And yes, I always miss the good old days of Grover Cleveland, Apprehensive Fly. I'm wondering when you're going to come up with a new one. I want a new one after Grover Cleveland. All right, you guys, thanks for watching. And if you don't know who Grover Cleveland was, just check your history books or, contact Apprehensive Fly for a full accounting of the relevance of Grover Cleveland to everything current and future and past. All right. Thanks for watching, guys.